We are snowed in once again, or should I say snowed out? Most of the town of Grass Valley seems to be shut down, and much of it is without power. That would be our shop included. Things are supposed to clear up by tomorrow, so hopefully through March we can open and resume to business as usual. But I wanted to share with you guys some specs on an interesting bike. I'm always looking at new types of batteries, new types of motors, new drive systems. What's new with electric bikes that's kind of stirring things up? And one of those that I've wanted to make a video about for quite some time is the Juggernaut XD Duo from Bike Tricks. Now, at first glance, this looks like any other fat tire electric mountain bike. But Bike Tricks has done something really unique. Now, when we talk about motors for e-bikes, there's usually two different types. You have a mid-drive motor mounted up in the cranks that drives the chain all the way to the rear wheel. And then typically with a mid-drive, you can shift through the various gears on a standard cassette. Or if you've got an internal hub, like say a roll-off, you can have multiple speeds that way as well. And one of the big advantages to a mid-drive is you can shift through the different gears, so you can have a nice low gear for climbing hills. You can shift into a high gear to go really fast.
40 miles an hour, 44, 45.
The downside is that all that wear and tear is happening on your drivetrain that typically is designed for pedaling. Now, for a lower power mid-drive motor, that works perfectly fine. There's really no issues with that. When you start getting up above 1,000 watts, 1,500, 2,000 watts, that's where it can start wearing the parts a little bit faster. Now, on the flip side, you have hub motors. It's a motor mounted in the rear wheel, so you can push the throttle at any given time, or you can shift gears at any given time, and they really don't affect each other directly. I find that typically hub motors are easier for people to use because you don't have to think about the drivetrain aspect. I think the simplest way to put it is it's like having a manual transmission in a car versus an automatic.
Yes!
Yeah! Top gear!
Now how do I stop?
What?
There are some other differences to how they work, but that gives people a really basic idea of, oh, one you have to shift gears and one you don't. And for the most part, that is true. Now, there are other types of motors I've seen over the years, but not all of those either make it to the market or they're not very common. For example, I've seen a hub motor that actually has internal gears, so all the shifting and everything happens inside. There's a gearbox that mounts in the middle of a bike instead of a cassette. You have things like the Schlumpf drive. If you spin the cranks, that front sprocket goes around like normal, 1-to-1 ratio. But if you pop this button in right here, which while riding you would do with your heel, now for every one revolution of the crank, the teeth are actually spinning around 2.5 times. There are so many different things that have been developed for bicycles and electric bikes over the years that the options as far as how do you get power from your feet to the rear wheel, as well as how do you get power from the motor to the rear wheel, are quite vast. There's just so many different ways to do it, and some people will swear that a hub motor is the best way to go. Other people over here say, no, a mid-drive motor is the way to go. And I feel like Bike Tricks has done something completely different that doesn't really fit either of these definitions. And this was supposed to be an overview of how the bike performs up and down hills, but due to the snow, we barely got any footage done before the snowstorm hit. So that is something I want to do in the near future. Just consider this an introduction on the XD bike from us and my initial thoughts and impressions on the motor system, what I think the potential pros could be, or maybe even potential cons could be, before we've been able to really put it through the ringer and see how it performs. Now, first off, this is a powerful motor. They rate it at about 2,300 watts, and that is a lot. Thankfully, we have some other demo bikes on the floor that are rated at over 2,000 watts as well. So we can actually pit this right up against some other bikes with similar power levels and see what the differences or similarities are. I wouldn't classify this as a typical mid-drive motor. It's definitely not a hub motor, but it has some characteristics of both, and I don't think most people realize it when they see this bike for the first time. So you've got this powerful motor, it's mounted in the middle of the bike, and at first glance you think, oh, it's a mid-drive motor. It works just like every other mid-drive motor bike, but it is not. It is not running through the chain on the right side of the bike that you are using for pedaling and changing gears. They have put a separate number 219 chain, which usually you'd see on like small go-karts and things like that, so it's really heavy duty compared to a typical bicycle chain, and they have that running on the left side of the bike. The really big advantage to this system is that you have a much heavier duty chain and you don't have to worry about breaking it because it's built for the amount of power this thing has. A bicycle chain can run 2,000 plus watts of power through it. I know professional athletes on sprinting tracks, just from their legs alone, can put out bursts of over 4,000 watts. But definitely there's going to be some more wear and tear and a higher risk of breakage, especially if you need to change gears. So what I find really interesting about this setup is that if you want the kind of high RPM motor mounted in the middle of the bike, so you have a better weight balance, which should mean better handling, this bike is going to achieve that. But also you have what I think is one of the main benefits of a hub motor, which is ease of use, because when you press the throttle, you do not have to worry about what gear you're in. You could be in any one of the gears. You could be shifting, not shifting, doesn't matter, because the chain line is completely separate on the other side of the bike and not attached to the normal pedaling side of the drivetrain. And normally that's a benefit only reserved to hub motor bikes. So it's kind of weird that this is a mid-mounted motor, but it has that advantage like a hub motor without the disadvantage of a hub motor, which is weight in the rear wheel. On the other hand, what they've done is created a mid-drive motor that doesn't use the gears on the bike. So you have a single speed drive system. And then that is more like a hub motor because they typically only have a single fixed speed. So you don't have quite the range of power. You don't have, hub motors are always kind of a balance between low end torque and high end speed. And my experience says that once you get to a certain power level, it doesn't really matter anymore. Now, typically in the past, I have told people that's around 3,000 watts. I feel like if you have a 3,000 watt hub motor, it's going to go fast enough. It's going to have so much torque that you're not really going to care that it's only one speed, at least for an electric bike. If you go up to something like a motorcycle that needs to get on the highway, then you're going to have to go up to like 8, 9, 10,000 watts. The power requirements go up dramatically depending on how much speed you want to achieve. So the real question for me, and we didn't get to test this yet because of the weather, is 2,300 watts, which is a lot of power, is it enough to compete with a bike that has maybe similar power output or even a little less, that has the advantage of changing gears. And that's where the real performance competition, I think, is going to be. Which bike would win in that type of scenario? And the answer is, I don't know, because this is a custom motor. They build this in-house in Canada, which is super cool, but we're going to have to wait for better weather to see how this really competes against other bikes. If you want to test out this bike for yourself, once the snow has cleared, we do have a demo model of the Juggernaut XD in the shop right now. So feel free to stop by, test ride the bike, or if you like it, just buy it and take it home. That is the plan for this bike. Once we're done with the videos we want to make with it, this might be your only chance to get your hands on one and actually test ride it before you buy. Once again, I'm Kyle from Area 13. If you're looking for more videos about electric bikes, we've got a ton of them on our channel. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and check one out right here.